Okay. Welcome back to the third day of NHRDN National Conference. I would request the participants to visit our partners' booths and have an immersive experience. I would like to thank all our partners and participants who have come in huge numbers for actively participating in the event, and I would request the same till the end. Now, moving to the session, COVID has made us realize that we need to keep upskilling ourselves and keep learning. Our next session focuses on the human resource competencies required for future with industry stalwarts like NSV Narasimham and Dr. Swati Sarangi. Mr. NSV Narasimham, the President and Chief Human Resource Officer at Science, is responsible for talent acquisition, management, and people development process across the business. He holds an MBA in Human Resources and a PhD from the University of Bristol. Next, we have Dr. Swati Sarangi, Global Head, Learning, Leadership and Organization Development, who is an PhD holder, academic gold medalist, and a thought leader and an eminent speaker at global platforms with over 25 publications to her name. This plenary will be moderated by Mr. Mohit Gundecha, a global business leader, co-founder, and CEO Jombe, an assessment and development technology platform. He has done his master's from Stanford University. Over to you, Mr. Gundecha.
Yeah, thank you, Charada. Do we need to, is this live or we need to get on the front stage? It's already there, right? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to my panelists, Nam and Swati. This is a topic that has been often discussed, and it's an honor to discuss HR competencies in the NHRDN conference, and it's a responsibility as well to discuss competencies that really will shape this function in the future. So I'll set a quick context. I will then invite my panelists to put their point of view, and we will take your questions as well. So when when the world has been working hard to flatten the COVID curve, COVID-19 has in turn flattened a lot of things. What was normal, the lifestyle that was normal, masks, social distancing, lockdowns, while they are on, hopefully it's an endemic, but over multiple years and multiple waves, some or the other thing similar, one can't deny that it will not happen again. The definition of working remotely has significantly changed. Work from home to work from anywhere, what was once a perk is now quite normal. Many organizations are struggling to get people back to work. Staying sane as we stay safe has become equally important. The brick and mortar world of retail has changed for good. The wine and dine style of selling and relationship management. Universities who prided themselves in selecting and teaching only the rich or gifted. It's like an orphanage priding itself that I reject 99% of needy who want my help. This elite culture will not really survive for too long. It's already getting disrupted. Education and the Ivy League schools are on the verge of getting disrupted sooner than later. So as this world is being reimagined, and coronavirus has been a wake-up call, habits of people are also changing. Personal and professional aspirations are evolving. Having spent so much time with the family, people have started thinking. Work and family values are being reinvented. Resilience and empathy is becoming more critical than ever. So this warranted for managerial playbooks to change. As people, business, their leadership is going through a permanent change. At Jombe, we tasked our team to have a look at what business leaders around the world are talking. We got them to curate research across professors from Stanford, Harvard, Indian School of Business, different industry leaders to come up with themes that that they believed are defining the competencies for the future. And this was for across the managers. Of course, this was not focused only on the human resources function, but this gave enough indicators. They scouted through more than 200 such citations and came up with themes. This is what was the compilation of the team. They came back and said resilience and empathy, connected leadership, connected leadership because it's no longer a workplace which used to be. So being connected with people, trusting them on getting the work done, cognitive flexibility, raising and shedding the beliefs of the past, digital dexterity, frugal mindset is no longer the competency of the developing world, and pragmatic orientation to be realistic and getting things out. So that's the future ready manager competency model that the team curated basis the curation basis the literature review that they did across so many business leaders and academic leaders. So on that note, while of course there are different competencies which have been important, none of these are new competencies. It's just that what happens with time is there are few competencies which become more important than others. So on that note, I would like to stop sharing my screen and invite my panelists to talk about what are the top two competencies they believe. While of course there could be more, what are the top two competencies they believe would be important for a HR professional to really leapfrog, not just survive, but capitalize in the new normal? So if I can invite Nam, what do you think are the top two competencies you believe will be more relevant than others in the coming time for HR professionals?
Thank you, Mohit, and a big thanks to all the organizers and greetings to all the participants. Um, Mohit, I think you beautifully put the situation and leading to the competencies. I would call it as evolving competencies, and
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think anything can be put in one place and brick and mortared. And as you rightly said, some of them become more important than the others.
Yep.
So I'd like to call out two that may be important from an HR professional's viewpoint, and and take two of the words that you used in the slides, right? So there is you use the word cognitive, but I would like to add the word ambidexterity for it,
Yep.
because I think we're all taught uh, and we tend to internalize that there is a left brain response and a right brain response.
Yeah.
But I think what COVID has taught us is I think you need to be switching between these, not
Yeah.
because of what I am comfortable as a professional, but what the situation demands and what the
Yeah.
organization requires.
Yeah.
Right? So that's
Yeah.
why I like to kind of, I'm calling ambidexterity for us to be able to
Yep.
switch between these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The second is, and I don't know the word for it. Okay,
Yeah.
that's why I I have to use a larger phrase. I think we have all learned to find these spaces within our job descriptions. Right?
Yeah.
Where HR professionals have responded, in a way that the organization required, where the families required.
Yeah.
They were never part of our stakeholder system outside
Yeah.
of the vision statement,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the reality is, I think we tended to respond,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing this because I think I have learned a lot from my team members
Mm-hmm.
who have taken autonomy to a completely different level
Yeah.
and made decisions that I think made the policies so effective,
Yeah.
including the changes. Right?
Yeah.
We would take 2 months to write a policy, test it out, get it benchmarked.
Yeah.
And what some of my newer team members have taught me is I think we can do it in 24 hours. That
Yeah.
is when the policy's resilience is tested.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I will put these two competencies that you asked as
Yeah.
the cognitive ambidexterity, and the
Yeah.
second is the spaces within the job descriptions
Yeah.
to be rediscovered.
Yeah, yeah, you absolutely. I mean, they actually, many of us or many of the HR professionals literally rediscovered by themselves the job description and went above and beyond and displayed the entrepreneurial orientation that otherwise could have perhaps taken longer in scenarios. So the situation, they say that right, either during war the country comes together, or cricket the country comes together. But the fraternity, I think, came together with COVID. And how beautiful you said the usage of right and left and interchangeably to really make the best of the situation at hand. So I completely agree with both, and very well said, ma'am. Thank you very much. And I'll come back to you on some follow-ups I have on this, but let me invite Swati. I've known Swati for a while, since our LNT days as well. So, Swati, what according to you are two competencies that you think really will make the difference?
Thanks, Mohit. And I think great framework that you shared. And also, I echo with a lot of things that Nam has also just elucidated. I'd like to call out two competencies that stand out for me. The first one is something to do with the mindset, and it is fluidity. And if we look at, what is really the ask today, it is about how fluid are we? I mean, are we going to be iterative? Are we going to be, willing to take those risks and bets, think out of the box, possibilities, abundance, and try to multiply in all of that. So I think that fluidity about the mindset has a lot of power. And as HR professionals, the more fluidity, the better we go. That's number one for me. Number two is something that I was thinking, which is a lot about, making things happen. And to that, I would say conscious co-creation.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we say conscious co-creation, there is a lot of power in that. It's about how do we collaborate, not only within the organization where we cross boundaries and functions
Mm-hmm.
and add value to the business and strategy and the culture that we are working with, but also, like, for example, a forum like this, how we are having a consortium approach,
Yeah.
opening minds and trying to co-create and look at it from a solution perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And when we consciously co create, we actually, as I said, make things happen. So it is from ideation to execution. And
Yeah.
it's a lot about what Nam spoke, the left and the right brain.
Yeah.
So for me, as HR, professionals in the ways and the times to come, keeping the backdrop of digitalization, the great resignation,
Yeah.
and the pandemic, social, demographic shifts, geopolitical crisis, and many
Yeah.
more, these two will be really the mainstay.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what both of you are saying has a deep connect. So if the right and left thinking is not supported with agile execution that cuts across teams in a digital world, especially because
Yeah.
time and again leaders have realized digital is more collaboration than actually digital, because no digital initiative succeeds if it's not adopted across the target audience. So if we are not able to apply the right and left in an agile manner with a fluid mindset that cuts across the departments, then our projects won't see the light of the day. So makes absolute sense. Thank you for that beautiful opening, both of you. So now I'm coming back to you and Swati. I'll come back on this point also. So this is a question to both of you. Tell me one instance that you saw in the last 12 months where somebody displayed a competency that you believe is the future, or one instance that really somebody displayed one of the futuristic competencies, either in your teams or somewhere else that you saw or heard of.
So I'll have to camouflage a few things, but let
Sure,
me tell you the.
sure.
It,
Story.
it connects to one of the points
Yeah, yeah,
I mentioned before, right? So
yeah,
from
yeah.
a learning from one of my team members
Hmm.
that I have repeated many times over,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's got to do with the policies stuff, right? There was the time when the second wave came, okay, and many of you have must have experienced this, right? So in particularly if your scope of responsibility is across geographies, where the first wave was receding, the second wave was picking up elsewhere, the
yeah,
second wave going down, third wave coming up. So while it is, now we are summarizing it as a narration,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a very very difficult yet an enriching experience. I think as professionals, somewhere the fluidity that Swati mentioned moved from the personal lives into the professional lives and
Yeah.
vice versa, and they were important to keep, right? Because in a very holistic way, we were meeting the organizational objectives that way. So there was this instance where, in very late in the evening, teams were kind of working very hard, trying to connect with global colleagues, and we had volunteers kind of coming, working with the HR teams, operations teams. And one of my colleagues actually questioned on saying somebody is calling me, and I'm not able to give them an answer. I have to send them to the policy.
Mm-hmm.
um, so I feel very frustrated.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm calling this out because I think it's a
Yeah.
very brave thing to say,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? The purpose of my call was to kind of, do the nice things and say, hope you're doing all right. Right? And that
Yeah.
was how I was mentally prepared. I was not mentally prepared for a pushback.
Yeah.
So the pushback happened, and it happened in such a very honest yet dignified manner. So I said, okay, what are two things that you think you can do? So
Yeah.
I need an approval to be able to give approval. Okay. If somebody is calling me and telling me that I need help, okay, I want to be able to help. Okay, not
Yeah.
give words.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that what happened after that was something that changed many of the processes within our organization. And then we
Yeah.
kept that as a benchmark as we look forward to, right? I
Yeah.
hope it makes sense, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I can
Yeah. Yeah.
elaborate, but just in the interest of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the interesting part is, I don't think this is unique, Mohit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure this will resonate with many of my colleagues. I've shared this with some of our own professionals in the network, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it is something that is clearly defined many organizations. And I'm not saying this as an anecdote that is unique to us. Right? What I'm
Sure.
saying is there's anecdotes like this. It's important for us to call this out, right? Have it in all the so-called case studies, because this
Yeah.
is what makes the next generation of HR professionals
Yeah.
learn very quickly and be more agile than what
Yeah.
we perhaps were.
Sure. Sure. Thank you. Now, somebody calling and saying, I don't need an approval to approve, or I don't need an approval to help. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
It's a great thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Okay. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Swati, would
Yeah.
you like to share an anecdote or an example where you really saw somebody
Yeah,
display?
actually, this is, there's so many examples, especially in the backdrop of pandemic. And as you rightly said, Nam, we are probably taking some anecdotal, examples that happened at our end, but there are many more. I mean, I'm sure several organizations have witnessed. But I just like to call out on the fluidity part, and it's actually both the competencies that I spoke about, no, conscious co-creation and fluidity. So
Mm-hmm.
when pandemic was at its highest peak, I'm talking about wave 1 and 2, where we really had the surge of cases rising. And Dr. Reddy's being a pharma organization, it was not easy for us because the Corona warriors, we used to call them warriors
Yeah.
because they had to turn up at work every day. The manufacturing folks going
Yeah.
there working, and at the same time we did have a couple of our folks working back home, and they were, so it was a hybrid model, and we were trying to make sure that the ones who were turning up for work were actually safe. And when I say safe, it's a big word because it's a lot about psychological safety, especially in the first wave. Even families were concerned to send them out. So the whole part around coming out with HR solutions, which were not really off the textbooks or limited to the policies, but practices which would really make them feel, that they are safe and they can contribute. We went all out. And I clearly remember that when we were thinking of how to put together something which would really, show that we care, one of my young team members came up to me and said, why don't we run a campaign around care, wherein we have care for self, care for others, and care for business?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really loved the framework, and it was so what I would say, so apt, because you everybody needed that dose of care for themselves and they didn't know how to
Mm-hmm.
do it. And it came from one of those young sparks, ideas as we were brainstorming. And we put together practically everything that we did by way of interventions and reaching out to people, those who were at home, and turning up for work at the sites and, plants, etc., around these three themes. And keeping the one that you spoke about, Mohit, you also said empathy and resilience.
Yeah,
Tons of it
yeah,
was required because
yeah,
fluidity is a lot about, some things working for us, some things not
yeah,
working. You're trying to scale up, you're trying to
yeah,
be cognitively flexible, some
yeah,
iterations here and there. And then the whole idea of we can't HR as HR folks do it alone. So it was a
yeah.
lot about conscious collaboration. So here we were reaching out across geographies, because Dr. Reddy's, this is the headquartered in Hyderabad, but we have branches
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. What would be apt for North America would not be, working in an emerging markets or in India, because some went into pandemic earlier than us. Plus collaborating a lot in the digital team, because technology really got accelerated. Digital
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
became a medium to be used. So
yeah,
trying to bring in gamification, simulations, and the HR folks thinking so tech like, and
yeah,
thinking using their the right brain part of it, dozens of them turning up, showing,
yeah.
saying that okay, we want to volunteer. So what I really found is that they were fully present. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I want to call out this particular attribute of there's a lot of power in presencing, trying to
Yeah,
sense what is the
yeah,
present requiring of us.
yeah,
And from a business perspective and people perspective, there is a lot that this particular attribute or competency also helps, and it
yeah,
is actually an amalgam of the two that I've
yeah,
spelled out.
yeah.
So
Awesome.
because it came from a young, just 2 years MBA pass out from one of the leading HR colleges, and this idea was so brilliant, and the way it got added, and we had a lot of value, I thought I should share
Yeah,
this.
yeah, absolutely. I like to share a similar anecdote. 10 maybe 12 years ago, when we started Jombe, our values were think, think, own, and run. Think if there's a better, cheaper way to do something, own something fully, run because time is not your friend.
Oh,
5 to 6 years on, we added a value called dare, because one of our leaders felt that, hey, we're not challenging ourselves enough. As you get known, you need to. So it became think, own, run, dare. And 2 years ago, there was another value that got added. It was think, run, own, dare, and care. And when you said, Swati, this exactly resonated,
yeah,
because we went through the same thing, that it's important. And we our monthly check-ins in
yeah,
for all leaders happen on these values. We don't speak about their competencies, we speak about their values. Of course, they have to display which competency they displayed for their roles, but these values become very important in that aspect. So thank you for sharing that example. So let me switch gears. There's been an age-old debate about seat at the table, right? uh, COVID finally, I think, settled that debate, that do we have the seat at the table. I think it unquestioning, I mean, unequivocally, it settled that debate. I would like to believe that. You feel free to agree or disagree to this. So, two questions to both of you. Is that debate settled during the COVID times? And now that we are coming back to work, will we still have to fight that battle again? So, Swati, can I come to you first, and
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
do
sure.
that after. Yeah,
So, seat at the table, and I was smiling away, because do we really need to shout from the rooftops and say we need a seat at the table or we
yeah,
do have one? I mean, it's not really required, but
hmm,
very rightly said, Mohit, that pandemic actually helped open hearts and minds both. So we
yeah,
realize there is, it's not a seat in the table, I'll say it's a seat at the heart.
yeah,
And the heart of what? Heart of the people that you're working with,
yeah,
heart of the business that you're working
yeah,
with. And coming back to the one on care, and I'm linking it to the seat at the table. When HR folks need to really, add value, and we
mm,
are supposed to be value creators. It's starting with care, share, and then dare.
yeah,
So the seat will automatically come that
yeah,
way. So,
yeah,
why do we say seat at the table? It's because we want to look at a strategic intent. I think
Mm-hmm.
that is the reason why, earlier we spoke about seat at the table. Today, I would say the strategic intent is any which way is there in everything that we plan,
Mm-hmm.
design, and we deploy in all our interventions, practices, etc. But what really got, the certain myths that got busted is that we don't have to really try very hard to say,
Yeah.
okay, we need a seat at the table. It's not
Mm-hmm.
required. In fact, if you look at it, that
Mm-hmm.
whole idea of aggression that we needed to display as HR professionals to compete with our other functions has gone away with. We don't need that. What we need
Mm-hmm.
would be empathy and assertiveness. That is the kind
Yeah.
of language and narratives that are being talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But what I would like to draw attention to one thing is that since the landscape of business is also so dynamic, many times the business will also lean on to us for
Mm-hmm.
coming out with solutions or evangelizing
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there, probably the two roles that I feel are more pronounced, where we need to really hold fort are the culture and the change part. The
Mm-hmm.
culture part, because we are actually, the culture is like a cradle of the organization, no? And HR professionals are custodians in many ways. So do they help people live the culture every single day,
Mm-hmm.
and not only during adversity, even otherwise?
Yeah.
Like, for example, at Dr. Reddy's, we say the one that you spoke about, values. So it's about empathy and dynamism. These are our two core principles and values. So
Mm-hmm.
dynamism is about agility, and then the empathy is all about the softness.
Yeah.
So HR professionals also, rather than the strategic focus, striving too hard, need to focus on these two things that
Mm-hmm.
I would like to say,
Sure.
and
Sure.
completely echo with the fact that the seat at the table is not really important. Seat at the heart is what is more
Yeah,
important.
sure,
Well
sure.
said.
Now, what do you think? Swati did a passionate push for seat at the heart versus really bothering about the table. What's your take? Will we and feel free to agree or disagree.
So, Mohit, if you allow me to take the lighter vein first, where is the
Yeah,
table? We're all virtual.
yeah. Table is also in the heart now, I think.
But it is interesting that we still have to look at it that way. I think it was rhetorical when it was first raised,
Yeah,
and I agree with Swati. I think it's a necessity when we are trying to shout out and say, look, we are doing something, allow us to do, give us a place. Okay. I think if you look at it differently, there
yeah,
is, I think businesses, HR professionals, other professionals have all realized the importance of each function. We are now discovering newer functions,
yeah,
newer sub functions. So to that extent, if we have stakeholders from the academic institutions on this call, I would submit humbly that we need to now start looking beyond the specializations
yeah,
and equip people, not train, right?
yeah,
Equip people and professionals for these kind of intermingling functions, job
yeah,
rotations, so that the seat at the table goes beyond the symbolism of
yeah,
somebody participating in a very strategic activity.
yeah, yeah.
So now to get more specific, I think not just here in this assignment, but even earlier for the last 10 years or so, I have had immense respect come from colleagues, and
Mm-hmm.
have also reciprocated it to an extent that if your operations colleague or a sales colleague calls you and says, hey, I'm going into this meeting, what do you think I should commit from a people side?
Mm-hmm.
I think you have actually owned the table. Forget about the seat.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
That shows a very different level to which you have taken the functional interdependencies.
mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, there will be tactical issues on which there will be tremendous amount of disagreements.
Yeah,
They need to be there because I think the how each function contributes to the CEO's directives is very very different. Yeah, there can be complete disagreement, but I think there cannot be a disalignment.
mm.
So you, I, as much as I agree with Swati on saying that you don't need to shout out. Think, let the work, let the systems orientation, and more importantly, the mindset of saying
Yeah.
that you cannot do it alone, and it is interdependent is more.
Yeah.
This is more important. The
Yeah.
second side of this, if I can take another
Yeah. Yeah.
minute,
Yeah. Yeah. Please.
is the complete, um, I would say, dissolving of the conventional systems on which we have relied. Right? Somebody asked me the other day, "Do you think that the dark lines and the dotted lines have significance?" I said, "Think about it. Today we are looking at the possibility of a gig economy, and moonlighting has become legitimate. So you're actually having a box that has no dot or no dash there. Right? So
Yeah.
it is actually a floating thing, and we need to
Yeah.
think on those forms of organization. So
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
submission is bring legitimacy to the function um,
Yeah.
by the not by the symbolism, and the second thing is look into the future very quickly
Yeah.
on whether the table is virtual or real.
Yeah, yeah. You're almost tempting me to ask the question. Whose table are you on? Really, are you on this table of the current company that you're on the roll? Are you on the table of the company that you are moonlighting on? Or on a serious note, it's. I mean, almost when I hear both of you, it's about it's up to the individual HR professional or HR leader on. Do you want to own the table? Do you want to expand the table? Do you want to be invited to the table versus really claiming a seat on the table? It's up to you on what you can do. So switching gears on this one, Nam and Swati, what could have been better? Like where, like one thing that we as a function you believe could do really differently, or in a way that we haven't done before. One thing, either of you can point out, both of you can point out. That's one thing that was a miss, you believe.
I think Nam kind of alluded to it in that when he was speaking about it. As a function, HR, though we had that business partnering terms cropping up, still in our own approach, we have been very blue blooded HR, like, looking at conventional themes that need to be covered in HR as an organization, as a function, etc. So it's a lot about drawing from other functions as well. If you look at it,
Mm-hmm.
as like for example in HR, don't we do a lot of branding of our efforts, which in essence is marketing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we take a return on investment of a kind of a calculation or an approach for many of our interventions
Yeah, yeah,
across the talent spectrum, which is a lot with the finance lens. And if
yeah.
we are very execution and razor focused, which is a lot about supply chain, logistics, etc., making things available to business and to all our stakeholders, especially the people at work. And then you have contract your people, who are not on your roles but also part of the ecosystem. Today
Mm-hmm.
there's so much of focus around sustainability in the organization, where you're looking at everything from an environment, social, and a governance lens. HR has huge opportunities to contribute there. So gone are the days HR is just a function. I would think we are all business professionals at first.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, clearly, if we dawn on that role with
Yeah,
a heart, as I said, and the
yeah,
heart is important.
yeah.
But if we look at it from that lens, it will be a lot of blurring of boundaries of HR, conventional
Mm-hmm.
HR. So whenever we are growing our function or we are grooming managers, in
Mm-hmm.
the HR space, how can we make them better? I use that term, co-creators for business. How can they collaborate? How
Mm-hmm.
can they draw upon? Build synergies, build alliances. That is the future. And the whole idea about, can we find out where the geopolitical trends are, sensing what is happening inside, outside. So dialing up the competencies which are not conventionally HR,
Mm-hmm.
but more linked to
Yeah,
business and other functions, will
yeah,
get in more meat into our function itself.
yeah.
So, if there is an undoing to be done or things to be added, I will say let's get in the digital data and maybe design thinking elements. That
Mm-hmm.
will augur us so much good in our own function.
Sure.
Can we get in more business, more marketing, more other areas also, retaining the core of our
Mm-hmm.
function? That will
Sure.
enrich our functions manifold.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure. Nam, your thoughts?
I I'd like to kind of agree with all the points
Sure.
that's what I mentioned. Right? I think beyond the function is something that I also mentioned before.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
more you create the silos and the function, the more you're creating identities that don't matter anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
But I think I'm also interpreting your question in a slightly different manner, right? What did we do wrong, right?
Yeah.
I think there is, and I'll kind of pick on something that has been bothering me for a while, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
tend to benchmark every time we want to do something, right?
Yeah.
So if I want to hire somebody after having 3 rounds of interviews, I want to go and do a reference check. Reference check is important, but I want to go
Yes.
and check with the earlier boss. I
Yeah.
want to go check with somebody else, right? It
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
it is actually, so I don't know whether it is risk mitigation, whether it is reinforcing a decision, getting a second point of view, or the key word here is best practice, right? And the best practice
Mm.
is something I'd like to challenge.
Yeah.
To your question, what have we failed? I think we should somewhere have something called, I don't know what the word is. We have got some very, very smart professionals on this network. We should look at it. But the point I'm making is, where have we failed? What have we done wrong? Instead of talking about what have I done right, I
Yeah.
think it is about it. 20 people can learn from that one mistake that we
Mm.
have made, right?
Yeah.
And I'd like to kind of, if I'm kind of preaching this, I'll also tell you what have I done wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then take the responsibility for it.
Yeah.
And the and we all talking about the great resignation. In my view,
Yeah.
it is a great comeback,
Yeah.
right? When the markets were in the employer's favor, okay, we and then many of the CNB professionals will kind of know what I'm talking about, right? We had
Mm-hmm.
medians, we and when we had a supply side positive situation,
Mm-hmm.
we tended to look below the medians. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and now I may be a bit technical, but the point I'm making is, I think at that point of time, we have to learn to say, or relearn to say no, go back to the stakeholders, say no. Listen,
Yeah.
you're getting this guy cheap or this lady cheap, but I think you can't go down below this. And I will not make an
Yeah.
offer unless you do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I will say mea culpa first, right? I'm,
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm guilty as charged for this.
Sure.
Somewhere, I think when that situation came 2 years ago, got aggravated about 18 months ago with the advent
Mm-hmm.
of COVID.
Yeah.
Okay, we took the easy route out, and
Mm.
as the markets turned, I think we
Yeah.
ended up paying a price for it.
Yeah.
We have to learn from this. I think this is coming back. I
Yeah.
saw this happen, 15 years ago. I'm seeing this now, and today at least, when we are in a position to influence, and I can tell you internally, we are now beginning to have those. If any of my colleagues are on this call, they will know that we are trying very, very actively
Yeah.
to push this, not just in India, across the globe, try and
Mm-hmm.
educate the managers on what this
Yeah.
median positioning means
Yeah.
and how it helps us kind of have a more
Sure.
productive market rather than going and muddying
Mm-hmm.
the talent pool.
Sure.
So
Sure.
let us
Thank you.
learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay, it is
Thank you for
important for all of us.
candidly accepting and admitting and sharing your learnings with all of us. So I'm going to switch gear. We have final 7 minutes. I'm going to get into a rapid fire mode. So I would request you to keep answers to few words, at best one sentence. What would you have done differently uh, as a student that now that you are at the HR leadership roles? What would you have done differently as a student?
I would have made my hands more dirty with practical things and done
Okay,
gone a little
practical
more
things.
wild. Yeah, wild through practice.
Experimented.
Yeah,
Okay, got
more
it.
experiment.
A PhD is saying this.
Yeah.
Sure. Nav,
This is a tough
apart
one.
from
Yeah,
being being
you
wild,
you
what
you
would
can't
you?
get me on this at the end of this. Okay, but I will. So the two hosts that we had backstage, I must call them out, right? So I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Isha and Charu, that
Yes.
if I wish I could be like them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Smart, confident, right? And then still say that I'm learning. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I tried to hide my mark sheet always as a student. right? Now I don't think that is, because the more the more failures you have, the less marks you have,
Yeah.
the harder you try.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You know, almost somebody telling me, when somebody on our board says ordinary people make extraordinary things, and in lighter vein he says extraordinary people end up in labs. Uh, but the point is everybody has a chance. So thank you. Next question: what are the preconceived notions about HR that got broken in the pandemic? Few words or a sentence. You can be witty as well if you like.
Yeah, the first one we spoke about, no, that strategic business partner myth, all that
Myth,
much ado
strategic
about
business partner.
nothing. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that
sure.
definitely. Also, the whole thing, I think engagement was considered to be, engaging with employees was limited to fun activities
Yeah, yeah,
and fun times and birthdays, etc. So a lot of that got, because it was
yeah,
a lot about reaching
sure,
out, listening in. So that
sure,
the particular thing
sure.
I think
Yeah, yeah.
surely got redefined. One more point on diversity inclusion, diversity, equity, inclusion. I
Mm-hmm.
think during the pandemic, it's not the personalization of
Mm-hmm.
how you do different things for different strains and
Yeah.
segments of people got again very highlighted, I would say.
Okay. Thank you, Swati. Now,
Soft is hard.
soft is
Hard. HR
hard.
is always seen as the, soft skills, the nice and cozy things, fluffy
Yeah.
things, not numbers. I think
Yeah.
all of those have been
Have been changed.
have been
Absolutely. So,
approved.
so let me ask you the follow up, and then Swati, I'll come to you. What's the most difficult thing about being a HR leader?
So is that for me or for Swati?
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry,
it's for
I
you.
think
For you. Now, it's for you. What's the most difficult thing being an HR leader? Then I'll go to Swati.
can I answer that by first saying what is a nice thing?
Yeah, yeah, please. Yeah, yeah,
when you
absolutely. Do that.
when you have a nice team, that's a
The nice
great
thing.
that's a
Awesome.
great boon,
Yep.
and I think I'm blessed.
Nice.
The hard thing about being the HR person is, if you kind of break your day into doing 8 or 10 things,
Yeah.
um, the ease with which you move from contradictions, right? You take an
Mm-hmm.
easy call, hard call. You're
Mm-hmm.
approving somebody's promotion is a nice thing. Then you're going to
Mm-hmm.
the next one, taking a hard decision on
Mm-hmm.
that. I think I won't call it as a hard decision,
Mm-hmm.
but I would also say that some of the assumptions we make about the chair of the HR head,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we'll have to be a bit more transparent.
Mm-hmm.
It
Sure.
makes things easier for the others.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of my friends and extended relatives think that I sign offer letters, and they think it
Yeah.
is a great thing, and it's a very nice thing. Okay, so the
You,
difficult part about that is, even if you are having a problem at home,
yeah.
right? You come into the office and you can't show that. Your smile
Yeah.
has to
Yeah.
be on,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So
You are the job creator. Yeah. Sure. Uh, Swati, what do you think?
Finding balance. And
Finding balance
there
is
are
the most
lots of
important.
paradoxes in HR, hard and soft, then
Yeah.
short and long
Yeah.
term,
Yeah.
business
Yeah.
priorities and people, your
Yep.
work and life, because as HR guys we're also stretched. There are
Yeah.
tons of work that needs to be done and our own
Yeah.
lives to be balanced with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the whole idea of finding balance
Yep.
in whatever we do, that is a
Yeah,
challenge.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, balancing paradoxes is easier said than done, but what a beautiful point you brought out. So, Dam, to you, what's one thing that you're looking forward to in 2022 regards to the HR function? Like, what's one thing or one initiative? And then, Swati, what is that thing you're looking forward this year?
oh, are we already in 2022? When did that happen? Okay. Um, I want somebody to teach me blockchain.
Lovely, lovely.
I'm one of the people, or one of the persons who is in the quota of differently abled on technology, and I want to take all that opportunities. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to travel and meeting all my colleagues and people in person. So
Nice.
so I think these are the two things I will say. But before you lock me out, I also want to thank. I can see some lovely comments coming up on this. I
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
thank each
yeah. Friends,
person.
Deepak,
Thank you for the
Deshpande,
opportunity.
uh, there is Ashish, Sunitra, Prachi. Really appreciate your encouragement, John. Anil, Praveen Nair, Guru, Nathan, Danesh, Dhananjay, thank you for inviting us and all the encouragement here. But Swati, quickly, last
Yeah,
one with
quickly. So
you.
I wanted to share that.
What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to enhanced experience for myself, for people that I work with, and the teams, etc. For everyone, three words: more joy, higher connectedness, and greater efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. More joy, be happy. Count your blessings. You are not running away from the Taliban. You are not running away from Putin. Count your blessings. Spend some time with your family. Give it the best shot because you don't get these chances quite often. I really personally enjoyed the session with the panelists who have been so sportive, candid, and really insightful. So thank you, Nam and Swati, and Nathan, Dhananjay, and everybody on the NHRDN team for inviting us.
Thank
Really
you. Thank you,
appreciate it.
Mohit.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Nathan, and the organizing team. Thank you, Nam, and wonderful
Thank you.
organizing behind the scenes as well. Arun,
Arun
Chandra,
and
and
everybody,
everybody.
absolutely.
Thanks a
Thank
ton.
you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Thank
Yeah.
you, Mohit. Thanks,
Oh
Swati.
yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Fun.
ma'am. Thank you so much, Mohit, and thank you so much, Swati, ma'am. It was really an honor and privilege to be part of this session. We learned a lot, and I am sure that all the young leaders, it will be a great learning for all of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.